A1C and prediabetes, the marketing of a new disease to America. I'm doing this video to give you some hope if you're pre-diabetic. My wife and I moved to Austin in 2003. I had a new ER job in Austin, but prior to our move here, I realized that I'd come out of my medical training in the late 90s, 30 pounds overweight. I'd grown up an athlete and I'd always been pretty fit. So I knew I had to figure out how to lose weight and get back to that place again. So I began to look for people who seemed to know how to do that. And by following people who were living a lifestyle based in fitness, I learned that physical transformation could be modeled, and in the process that it often translated into better health. And as I began to model these people, I lost the weight that I'd gained. I fell in love with fitness and I wanted to teach others what I knew that I hadn't been taught in medical school. So in 2006, my wife and I opened a weight management clinic here in Austin, teaching what we called fitness-based weight management. And I became certified in bariatric medicine, and we helped a lot of men and women get fit and healthy again. But I began to notice something about almost all of our patients. They all seem to have elevated liver enzymes, specifically ALT and AST. And because I was still working in the ER at the time, I would see similar patients there who also had elevated liver enzymes. But in the ER, I noticed something else. CT and ultrasound studies showed that they also had fatty infiltration of the liver. And I started asking myself, why am I seeing so much fatty liver disease? Then it hit me. I was born in 1961, and I realized that a lot has changed over the past 62 years. I remember the TV dinners in the 1960s and their small portion sizes, and there was often a tiny little dessert if there even was a dessert. But now everything is about more and bigger, and today we have all-you-can-eat buffets, fast food 24/7, and the standard American diet is really unhealthy. So over time, I realized that as an excess of high carbohydrate calories are coming into the body consistently, the liver ultimately becomes congested with fat. As the liver becomes full of fat, at some point it just can't take any more of it. And then excess calories are stored throughout the body in order to compensate. Insulin resistance develops, and in some cases, this progresses to full-blown type 2 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes is simply an overstorage disorder. And this is bad news because when you're diagnosed with type 2 diabetes in America, we've been taught that it's not reversible. As a profession, it's pharmaceuticals first in managing type 2 diabetes, rather than emphasizing a lifestyle change. But as Dr. Jason Fung says, you can't cure a dietary disease with drugs or devices. And yet, pharmaceuticals are how most doctors initiate treatment for type 2 diabetes. Because elevated liver enzymes and fatty liver have become like wallpaper to us, many doctors don't make the connection that these findings are actually where type 2 diabetes begins. So as I saw more and more patients on multiple medications, often progressing to the addition of insulin as well, and as I watched pharmaceutical commercials for new diabetes medications, over the years I began to ask myself a question. When and how did A1C become the primary focus in the management of type 2 diabetes, to the exclusion of emphasizing optimal weight and a fit body? Around 2006, I realized that pharmaceutical commercials were talking almost exclusively about this number, A1C. So as I began to get more curious about this, I came across this article. It's from the online journal Science and written by Charles Piller in 2019. And it's titled, "The War on Prediabetes Could Be a Boon for Pharma, but Is It Good Medicine?" And subtitled, "A third of Americans are considered pre-diabetic, but many may be better off without treatment." Mr. Piller begins the article by making this statement. He said, "The most common chronic disease after obesity, afflicting 84 million Americans and more than 1 billion people worldwide, was born as a public relations catchphrase." Mr. Piller says in 2001, the PR chief of the American Diabetes Association approached Richard Kahn, the group's then chief scientific and medical officer, for help with a vexing problem. The vexing problem, Kahn said, was that the ADA needed a pitch to persuade complacent doctors and the public to take seriously slight elevations of blood glucose that might signal a heightened risk of type 2 diabetes. He said raising the alarm wasn't easy, so Kahn invited half a dozen diabetes thought leaders to brainstorm at the National Institutes of Health cafeteria in Bethesda, Maryland. Kahn said within a relatively short period of time, they landed on a term that seemed sure to scare patients and doctors into action. And that term was prediabetes. Kahn said, "We went back to the ADA office after lunch and started the change. Within a relatively short period of time, we eliminated impaired fasting glucose and impaired glucose tolerance and substituted prediabetes into all of our literature. Soon the term prediabetes was enshrined in the ADA's standards of care. The ADA and the Centers for Disease Control declared war on prediabetes, an entity which up until that moment had never been determined to be a medical illness at all. This new illness, prediabetes, was created by the American Diabetes Association in 2001, and it was marketed to doctors and the general public alike. And it created a new imperative for doctors to prescribe medications to their patients who had only mild elevations of their blood glucose. The ADA's new recommendations acted to transform people without diabetes into patients who suddenly had prediabetes. The article went on to say this campaign to push prediabetes into the public awareness and influence the prescribing habits of thousands of doctors created an estimated 72 million potential new prediabetes patients in the United States alone. So prediabetes was contrived by a small group of leaders within the American Diabetes Association. But there's more. In a 2003 article by Paul Holmes, the founder of PRovoke Media, he explains how GlaxoSmithKline, makers of Avandia, teamed up with Kahn and Wolf, a global public relations firm. Together, they developed a unique program combining marketing, advertising, and public relations. They called it the Know Your A1C campaign. The campaign also informed people with type 2 diabetes about the value of the company's new drug, Avandia. The article said that since A1C levels are one of the key reasons that physicians switch or add on therapies, we therefore ensured that the campaign also included information about Avandia. The grassroots tour traveled across the country to food and state fairs. They did interviews with local doctors, created press kits and B-roll film footage, and they had a truck branded with the Avandia logo, which traveled to more than 20 markets across the country. The article said, "We met our objective by receiving 33 million media impressions with 850 stories in over 200 markets through radio and placements on CBS and USA national radio networks." So in the span of less than 5 years, we had the ADA creating and marketing a brand new illness in the form of prediabetes to the American public. And a major pharmaceutical company teamed with a global PR firm with a mission to encourage twice yearly A1C testing while promoting their new drug, Avandia. So why does this matter? It matters because the decisions made by organizations like the ADA shape how doctors practice. And in many cases like this one, what they passed down became the standard of care for better or worse. One of their objectives was to create a medical term that would scare people. And they did that in a big way with prediabetes. A diagnosis of prediabetes created fear and anxiety in untold numbers of patients over the years who were informed that they suddenly had this illness. For others, the diagnosis created a financial burden with prescriptions and doctor's visits, and this campaign unnecessarily exposed many patients to drug side effects, which in some cases turned out to be serious. In fact, Avandia was later taken off the market due to concern that it may increase the risk of heart attack. Richard Kahn, who left the ADA in 2009, said he now rues the day he helped promote the term prediabetes and calling it a big mistake, and saying nobody really thought at the time how pre is prediabetes for all of these people. In 2018, a review of 103 studies by the Cochrane Library in London showed that most people who qualify as pre-diabetic never progressed to diabetes over any period that was studied. And 59% of prediabetes patients returned to normal glycemic values in over 1 to 11 years with no treatment whatsoever. I want you to understand this. Pre and type 2 diabetes in most cases can be prevented and reversed through weight loss, fitness, and better nutrition. And thousands of people are proving this every day by changing their lifestyles and adopting low-carb nutrition in various forms. But unfortunately, most people won't hear this from their doctors due to years of propaganda and financial influence from the ADA and Big Pharma. So many patients blindly accept false dogma from their doctors that there's nothing they can do but manage type 2 diabetes with pharmaceuticals. We've reached a crossroads where long ingrained medical dogma about type 2 diabetes is being challenged. There is There's never been a more important time in modern history to take the reins of our personal health and be proactive about making our fitness and nutrition a priority. Prediabetes was marketed to all of us, as was Big Pharma's agenda for frequent A1C testing. We've been manipulated by some powerful entities. Despite this, we have more control over our health than we're often led to believe. I hope you're making the best choices every day to optimize your health and your fitness and your nutrition. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.